systems. You know what I'm
R.
saying?
Kelly.
Yeah, but that's just the room. There's nothing like that. Sadly, there's nothing that can be done. It's just an echoey room.
This is a big
Even
room.
without a mic.
Room.
Echo. This room just sucks.
Dude, this room really sucks.
Yeah,
Yeah, dude.
yeah. I wonder why. Well, I
What's up
mean,
with all this wood?
the reasons are kind of obvious, but I'm.
If you want to test it, I can talk and do it. Cool. You want to go back to theirs? I'll chill back here. I think it's slid off sometimes. Is it fucking doing that thing again? Oh, there it is. Is it going through? The 8 is 546,200. They all should be tuned right. This is definitely not muted. Really? What about this one? Is this one working? The 8th one? 8? How about? I think the battery should be. They're full battery and they're connected. There's no antennas on the back? No. This one has antennas, right? Is that why this one worked? Does it need multiple? No. Oh, okay. So it just didn't have any. That would probably explain it. Okay. It's like, that doesn't make any sense.
Testing, mic 8. Mic 8.
Mic 5.
Wow,
Mic 5.
mic 8.
Hello, welcome to our local food systems panel.
Yeah, we're going to talk about food.
We got Ritz crackers.
We do?
No, we don't.
We don't. I don't have any food on me, but we're
Testing.
we're talking about food systems.
Mic 5.
Evergreen? Yeah. How food is delivered to Evergreen. Man, I'm fuzzy. I don't feel fuzzy.
Maybe it's because it's so close to my food.
Wait. What's happening? I got some fuzz. I don't see any fuzz. Like this?
I changed the sensitivity on it. It was at like 24, and then it was 18. We're back to 24.
What frequency is that, Mike? Yeah, but they're far enough apart that it shouldn't really make a difference. They're much closer. Yeah, test.
Mic 5. Test.
Mic
Testing
8.
mic 5.
Testing.
Testing mic 5.
Testing. Mic 8.
Testing mic 5. Testing. A,
Check,
B,
check.
check.
Check 8. 8. 8. Check. Talking about food systems.
Talking about
Yeah.
food on mic 5.
Food.
Mic 6. Mic 6. Hello, testing mic 6. Testing 1 2. Mic 6. Testing mic 6. This one sounds different. I don't know. It might be. I don't know. Does it sound different? Testing 1 2. Mic 6.
Or is that just me? It sounds like it has like less noise.
Yeah.
Oh, that would make sense.
Want to do the MC though? Testing, testing, testing. 1, 2, 3, testing. Announcing, talking. Don't really know where the MC is gonna be, so I'm just gonna circle around and make sure nothing sounds bad. I'll wait for you. Check this sensitivity.
so happy together. If I should call you up, invest a dime, and you say you belong to me, lose my mind. Imagine how the world could be so very fine, so happy together. I can't see me loving nobody but you for all my life. When you're with me, baby, the skies will be blue for all my life. You and me, no matter how they toss the dice, it had to be. The only one for me is you, and you for me, so happy together. I can't see me loving nobody but you for all my life. When you're with me, baby, the skies will be blue for all my life. Me and you and me, no matter how they toss the dice, it had to be. The only one for me is you, and you for me, so happy together. No matter how they toss the dice, it had to be. The only one for me is you, and you for me, so happy together. So happy together. And how is the weather? So happy together. We're happy together. So happy together.
Everybody, is this working? Yes. So my name is Erin Shearer. I am the chair of the Food Systems Working Group. So we were a part of planning this panel today, and this is the first time an event like this has happened. So it's really exciting for all of us. Just so we all are aware in the room, this is being recorded and live streamed, but that's great because we can look back at it on the future. So yeah, Michael, would you like to?
Hello, my name is Mikhail. I use he and him pronouns. I'm Euro-American and of Choctaw descent, and I was asked by the Native Path Pathways program to come be a part of the Food Systems Working Group. And that's how I'm here. I applied for a job, and so now I'm the vice chair. I was asked to prepare a land acknowledgement for today, and I'm going to change my process a little bit and go into my land acknowledgement. So I thought considerably about how to do this, and I asked a lot of questions. I asked my whole class, Native Pathways class, how would you go about giving a land acknowledgement? And the thing about this work is that, hey, welcome everybody. The thing about this work is that you'll keep sinking into answers, long answers, and you have to keep asking sometimes the same question for years. So I'm here today, here I am, and I'm asking what is a land acknowledgement. And if you just go with the first answer, you probably won't get the full view, right? It will be incomplete and often steer you off track, or worse, get you stuck and very stagnant. So yes, a land acknowledgement is the acknowledging of the land, but what does that mean? Fundamentally, it means that we acknowledge the indigenous perspective, worldview, and historical memory. So first being that the body is the earth. The body is the earth. That we belong to the earth and the earth does not belong to us. Second, that difference and diversity are what life thrives on. They are food for life. That multiplicity is reality. That every aspect of life is equal, belongs, and is conscious, part of the animate universe. That every creation has its own perspective. Thirdly, that before Europeans came to this land and committed genocide, there were thriving societies built on these principles, built on deep respect for and responsibility to the earth. It is a widely accepted fact that without native peoples of this land, Europeans would not have known how to survive. And I'm not saying this because and I am saying this because it is not enough to say that this is stolen land and to name one tribe. It is not enough to repeat one or two sentences every time, for they are only shells and echoes of a true, healthy, and full acknowledgement of the land. So by being here and opening up our spaces and conversations with acknowledgement of land, we are acknowledging the intelligence of each and every aspect of the land, the plants, the animals, the bugs, the rocks, and the humans, the ancestors, the water, the heat, the air, the wind, and every component of DNA, the ecosystem. And herein, we are acknowledging that there are people who do know how to heal ourselves, people who do know how to heal, and how to heal the earth, how to run equitable, just, and sustainable organizations, institutions, and society. And with that, we say thank you. And I task all humans who are here today to do your research. What is a land acknowledgement? What is the history? And how can we change our conditions? Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming. My name is Pamela Ronson, and I'm today's moderator. My pronouns are FEFER, and I just want to welcome you to this space. And I think the most important thing for me today is that we have a conversation, that we just have a well-balanced, fair, honest, open conversation about our food system on campus. And today is the result of that. So no one's here by accident. And I just wanted to stress that I am aware of my bias. I am a farmer, and I come from the POF program in 2017, and I acknowledge that that's my bias, and I'm going to keep that in check today. I believe in closing the loops on campus. I believe in closed loop systems where the farm can be the beginning and the end, but today I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to make sure that every voice here is represented because we all have different perspectives, and I'm just going to make sure that I stay as neutral as possible. Okay, with that, I'm going to ask all of our panelists today to introduce themselves one by one. We'll have about a minute. And then after that, we'll get into the actual question. portion of it. Sorry. I ate a turnip before, and now it's like in my mouth, you know, and yeah, it was really good. I like the taste of it. It's still in my mouth. I love it. So we'll have about 45 minutes or so for just a straight question and answer session, and then after that we'll take a break. It'll be about 5-10 minutes, and then once we come back from the break, we'll ask everyone in this room, what does a just and sustainable food system look like to you? And we'll be able to talk and discuss for about 20 minutes, and then we'll wrap up. So that's the agenda for the evening, and I would like to start with Lauren. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Lauren. I use she, her pronouns, and my engagement in the campus food system has been working with the Greenery this past year, introducing a Green Monday program to increase the amount of plant-based and local foods. I'm also the GSU Sustainability Liaison, and I have been a vegan club coordinator for the past 2 years, and I'm involved a lot on campus in building community around making more ethical and sustainable food choices.
Hi, my name is Maya. I use she and her pronouns. My association with the food on campus is I am a Flaming Eggplant Collective member, and I have been with the Flaming Eggplant since 2016. And my hope for, are we doing like we talk about what our position is? Okay. What I think needs to be the center of the conversation around our campus food system is an ethical food system, which could mean many different things. There's ethicality in labor practices, in sourcing, and in the actual effect that the food has on consumers. So approaching it from like a holistic sense of ethicality. And the destination in that, I guess, is that I believe that self-op would be the only true, like, ethical option for our campus food system.
Hello. I'm Katie. I use she, her pronouns. I am really speaking from the perspective of being a student at Evergreen, having lived on campus last year, and just kind of a participant in the food system from that side of things. My position is that I would second the concern about the ethics of the food system, and then also just understanding the role of food as a source of building community, and that's something I'm concerned about as it applies to Evergreen as a campus in general. And yeah, my hope for today is that it just sets a really strong precedent for transparent, authentic communication and conversation between all parties involved, and not just the idea of it. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Doug Cole. I use he or him pronouns. I'm the food service director for Airmark. The most important for us is meeting student needs. And we're working on incorporating more plant-forward recipes and bringing students more options at a better value. It's also important for us to support Evergreen State College, in which is why we are working with the organic farm to purchase them in ways that is more sustainable. We want to learn and understand the needs of Evergreen State College community.
Miyuyam? Is this on? Miyuyam Temenue. My name's Kendra Aguilar. I'm currently adjunct faculty with the Native Pathways program. And I'm also a graduate of that program when it was a reservation-based program, and went on to do my master's in public administration here with the tribal governance focus. And my master's capstone with April McGill and Adam Osbikoff was around tribal food sovereignty. And after that, I was able to do an internship with the Squaxin Island Tribe when they hosted the 2012 Intertribal Canoe Journeys on the traditional foods team, and we created a traditional foods, the first of the journey's traditional foods meal. So I kind of come from that place, and I want to thank you, Mikkel, for your land acknowledgement, and not simply just naming local tribes, for example, but asking people to do more research and looking further into what that means and the depth of that. And so my position is really wanting to draw attention to the need, in order to create inclusive and ethical and equitable food systems, that we need to consider indigenous place-based framework.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sharon Goodman. I'm the Director of Residential and Dining Services here on campus, and I use she, her pronouns. And I've had the wonderful opportunity in my 12 years to be able to really work with the food systems groups. I helped work with the eggplant right when it first started, and advised that group for several years. And the food systems work group is a new group on campus, and I got to work with the students who designed and implemented that. So I've got to, in my 12 years, I've really seen the history of the food system and learned about the complexity. And I think there's lots to learn and think about. And in my position, I'm the contract administrator with Aramark, or if we have any, whatever food system, if we have any contract or self-op, that's part of my position as the Director of Residential and Dining Services currently. That could change.
Thanks. Hi, my name is Connor Murphy. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the organic farm manager. I've been at Evergreen since January of 2016, so this is the start of my 4th farming season. And the organic farm, probably many of you have been to, but it's just down this way. So I encourage anyone that hasn't had a chance to go. Check out the organic farm, and I'm excited to be here today to talk about some of the positive stuff that's happening in the food system on campus, including an upcoming grant that we're learning the details of, about a partnership between the farm and CCBLA and some faculty to support food access on campus and gleaning, and then some great work that came out of the food systems working group, some political and policy work that has changed the way that food stamps will change the way that we can accept food stamps on campus, which is going to be tremendously important, I think. And so I'm excited to talk about some of that really exciting, positive news.
You ever get that feeling of how far away do I hold the microphone? My name is Rochelle. My pronouns are they, them, and she, her. I am the AmeriCorps Vista at Thurston County Food Bank and the Center for Community-Based Learning and Action, also known as the CCBLA. I graduated last June, and I was a student here for 2 years. My most visible position is I coordinate the campus food bank, and I hope this sets the foundation to lead with transparency, honesty, reality, and we all come forward with our identities and our values, and I hope that all is valued and listened to, recognized, and I also want to push that we prioritize student voice, especially those who experience marginalization, and the time and energy that students have put into this work.
Okay, thank you. The next 3 points, I'm going to talk about how the panel got organized, the history of the food system, very briefly, and then some conversation norms. So, welcome everyone who just came. How the panel got organized was that I remember Back in 2017, I did the POF program. I audited it, and I remember one of the components of it was that you had to do market for credit, meaning you had to sell produce at the market. And I remember just watching all the staff and the faculty come along, and the staff and the faculty come along, and the staff and the faculty come along. And I wasn't seeing the students, and I was like, wait a minute, where are they? So Connor actually had a job posting. It was just like in the farm office on a cold November day, and he was just like, hey, so there's this job opening, Food Systems Working Group. And I was on it. I was just like, okay, cool, we gotta get this. So out of that came the CEC grant, where now students can purchase farm produce at 50% off. Secondly, the card reader at Market, which is really big, because if you don't have cash, then you can pay with your card. And now with the EBT card, that's going to be huge. And the third thing was the policy that you're talking about, the EBT bill passage. How can students use food stamps on campus, or the EBT SNAP benefits? It's interchange. And then Aaron and I have worked together on that over the past year, and out of that, sort of those three things, came the idea from Martha and Sarah and Preeta as well. How do we have an opening? How do we talk publicly about the food system? Things are changing. Things are happening. How do we talk publicly? So that's how the panel got started. And I hope it's a yearly thing, right? Yeah, Mikkel would like to lead that way, to have a yearly happening. Secondly, the history of the food system. And Sharon, I'm going to need your expertise here a little bit. From my notes, let me go back. I have, basically in 2003, the college lost $500,000 with the Bon Appetit contract that we had when we went out to bid the request for proposals in 2003. So we put another bid out. And Sharon, correct me if I'm wrong with any of this.
I don't have the dates memorized, but it sounds
it's okay.
exactly so far.
Yeah. The contract was up for renegotiation in 2013. So in 2003, they looked at the package bid and the amenities, the hours, the staff. And Aramark was the one that offered the second highest marks in sustainability, meaning they paid $2.50 over the minimum wage, and they had benefits for their employees. And they were the ones that were the closest to the mark to being sustainable. And so Evergreen went with them. And for the past 10 years, right, 2013, and then it was up for rebid, they re-signed on in 2013, and now I believe August 31st, 2020 is sort of the end date, where 2022 is the official end date, and we're trying to prepare before that. What does that look like? What does a just and sustainable food system look like in the future? And so that's sort of been the history of the food system up to this point, where we've had these bids, and Aramark has been the most sustainable bid out of all of them, as well as the most inexpensive one. We feed about 500 students a day in the greenery, so that's roughly 2,500 meals a week. And within the contract, there was a requirement of the first year students having to be on the meal plan. And I think we're looking at now, this conversation is looking at now a shift in model systems. So before we get into the actual panel and the questions that you all have and the answers that we're going to hear, I would like to just stress some conversation norms. And up here, I'd like to direct your attention towards this cup. If you can think of filling it with your favorite beverage. And if we just think about a C. For staying calm, just meaning be kind. Listen with integrity. And just stay at peace. So just being really intentional about your position and where you're at before you raise your hand or before you say something. Secondly, if you look at the U, for understanding. And this just really means, I might not agree with your position, I might not like it, I might not even really understand it, but at least I'll respect it. I'll respect the fact that you think that way, and I'll try to understand. I'll try this on, as we like to call it. I'll try to meet you where you're at. I'll try to understand. And the last one is the P. For patience. Because changes in perspective take time. If you think about your own perspective in something, let's say you're like, oh, I have this really bad habit, and I really want to stop it. Think about how long it took you to actually stop it, right? And that's you. So if you think about trying to stop or start in somebody else, it takes time. So just be patient and know that we're creating a safe space here for talking. So with that, those are the 3 points. I'd like to now open up the panel for where we're at in the present food system. And here's how we're going to do it. If you have a question, you can raise your hand, and I will basically just give you a number. And I'll say number 1, number 2, 3, 4, etc. And just whenever I call your number, you can say your question from your seat. Sound good? All right. Okay, how are we doing? How are we feeling? You ready?
I have a question. Which mics should we use? Do you know? Just this one? Yes. Good job, Rochelle. Oh.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let's make sure we hold that cup, right? Calmness, understanding, and patience, and just regular evergreen discussion norms. And let's talk a little bit about where we're at today. Doug, do you want to start us off, or Sharon? Where we're at today with the present food system.
Yeah, I think, so where we are with the dining contract, I think there's lots of parts around the food system, so I think we can definitely focus the conversation on that, but I think of everyone in this circle in the food system, and it's much broader, right? So it's all the food served on campus. You highlighted sort of where we are in the contract. So I'm going to be working this summer to start mapping out the process of an RFP, and hopefully I'll work with, I know Mikkel has some summer interest, and so I think that'll be a great summer project to start mapping that out and working with the GSU to think about just the physical process. So we are a state institution, and so if we are looking for another food vendor, we would have to do a request for proposal, which we have lots of actual control over, and students have always been involved in that process, and we would do that again. And we had faculty also on that committee, which was great. In terms of where we are, I think in the larger sense, I think we're in a good place. We have lots of communication with everyone at this table, really thinking about what are all the options. So I think we've been having some really good connections with the Organic Farm. We've been doing lots of good work around food insecurity, really leveraging the contract to make sure that there's places where we're donating, where there's donations of food, and working with groups. I will let the Flame Eggplant talk about sort of where they are in that system and where they are doing. I think we're also in a scary place because enrollment numbers are low and dropping, and trying to figure out having enough having students on campus and in housing. We were going to build new residence halls, and we're on a delay for that. So I think there's lots of questions that would make me think about what are all the pieces that we need to think about in the food system as we're embarking in the future. Of how many students we have, where are we going? But I think this is a great time to have those conversations and to think where we've been and where we want to go, and some of those ethical questions that have been asked. And I also think that there's been lots of really good collaboration and good work that's been happening, and so the right people are in the conversation. We didn't have a food systems work group until recently, so after we signed the Real Food Contract commitment in I think it was like 2014 or 15. My numbers are fuzzy, but we formed a student group that's a really independent student group that is bringing all the players together. So I think that's a really large asset of our community, that we are able to bring a large group together to have that conversation. So is that what you were looking for, Pam?
Yeah, so what else is going on? Like, what else is presently going on? Doug, can you speak to that?
Well, presently, for me, lately, we have had a pretty big decline lately in with our sales and also our participation in the greenery. So it's been pretty stressful in our work center. So there's been a lot of questions on how we do things, how we operate, when we're open, all these things. So we're trying to figure out, and then what's been the pattern. We know that it's warm out, it's nice, and there's been decline usually in that, but so I'm here for that reason, to figure out how do we make people happy, and how do we keep people coming, and is it self-doing, is it stuff that we're doing, or is it, so I think I just have a lot of questions, and so I'm here to kind of learn too from you guys on what you guys' ideas and stuff like that, so that's it.
Okay. Maya, can you speak to what's going on with Eggplant, please?
Yeah, as hopefully all of you already know, I hope this isn't surprising to anybody, the Eggplant is currently paused in operation, so we are not open this spring quarter or summer, but we haven't historically been open in the summer. Because of some significant debt that accumulated in the past 10 years, like continually since the founding of the Eggplant. And there's a lot of reasons for that: changing campus environment and the financial situation of the campus, and continuing lack of support and resources from the offices on campus that I think should have been taking a more active role in keeping the Eggplant above water. And so the Student Activities Office generously absorbed outstanding debt and suggested that we take this pause in operations to look inward and make some larger changes in the structure of the eggplant. So that's what we're doing right now. The Eggplant Collective doesn't currently exist. I am a member of the Eggplant TLC, which stands for Time Limited Committee. And we right now are in the phase of creating a new business plan to present to stakeholders on campus very soon, and a couple days after that present to the Student Activities Board or the SNA Board for funding. So this quarter we're kind of starting from scratch, creating a new business plan, and then next quarter we will be working out the details of that and preparing for operating, hopefully, next fall.
What does time-limited commitment mean?
It's just a committee that only exists for the amount of time that we need to accomplish this task, which is to reopen the eggplant. The term that was used previously was DTF, which is Disappearing Task Force. But I believe Indigenous people brought up that the word disappearing is problematic in that way because people aren't disappearing. The people on the committee are not disappearing. The committee is not functioning after the goal is achieved. So we've changed the name to Time Limited Committee.
Okay, thank you. Rochelle, do you want to talk about what's going on presently with the food bank? No? Yeah, go for it.
All right, one thing I do want to make clear about the Campus Food Bank is that it's not an emergency resource. Thurston County Food Bank is abundant in food. If you think about the many ways that Thurston County Food Bank gets their food, grocery rescue programs, gleaning, Food Lifeline, Northwest Harvest, these big, I'm not good at explaining what those things are, but we are abundant in food. They recently got a warehouse and distribution center a couple years ago that is filled with food. And so people who come to the Campus Food Bank think it's an evergreen food bank, think that there's limited supplies, and think that if they use it, they're taking food away from people who really need it. But the truth is that we get a weekly delivery from Thurston County Food Bank. We strive to meet people's needs, even acknowledging that we can't meet all needs. There's limited things that we can provide. And through donations to the food bank or through ordering in bulk or through grocery stores, we try to reach certain populations. So this year, I noticed that there were a lot of people who come to the food bank. There's a number of people who are gluten-free, people who are vegetarian, people who are vegan, lactose intolerant, people who have allergies. And it wouldn't be right for me to not try to go to the food bank and try to specifically ask for plant-based items, gluten-free items, and plant-based alternatives to feed the population at the school. Presently, I did some numbers, and since January, we have averaged about 62 people checking into the food bank each month. We are at around 330 households, multi-person and single, since January. And we don't only open our services to students, it's every person in the community. Thurston County Food Bank strives to be low barrier, so we don't check whether you're a student or whether you're employed or your citizenship status or anything like that. You don't even have to disclose your income. You don't even have to show us your ID, but for a check-in process so we get your name spelled right, that's recommended. And there's so many different reasons why people come to the food bank, whether it's just to get some free food or whether to take that budget item out of the many list of things that they have to pay for. And if you come to the food bank, you can see that we can provide full meals for students. And we try to have no-cook options for people who don't have cooking utensils. We try to provide a variety of food and then consistent, shelf-stable items for students. And let's see. Oh, and with the weekly delivery, we do get produce, fruits, vegetables, shelf-stable items, refrigerated frozen products. So if you have a refrigerator or cooking utensils, you can take those products. It's not the stereotypical view of a food bank where it's expired canned food or canned food, basically peanut butter and jelly, things like that. We try to offer a wide range of services. So sum up, not an emergency resource. Anyone is welcome at any point in their financial situation, any type of situation in general, welcome to use the food bank. And with the amount of people that have been coming, after snowpocalypse, there was a period of time where we were checking in around 80 people for the 4 weeks after snowpocalypse. So what does that tell you? What is it? Even while the campus food bank isn't widely promoted on campus, we're not included in lots of campus announcements, and there's ways to improve that, I know, but the thing is, it's a very necessary resource. We're trying to address student hunger on campus, food insecurity, and these are ongoing issues that college campuses throughout the country face.
Thank you. Connor, can you talk a little bit about what's going on at the farm?
Yes. So I think just to give some of the background, so the organic farm is part of academics. And so that means that our main focus is for your education. So there's a program that's very closely linked to the farm called Practice of Organic Farming, which is a spring, summer, and fall program. And so Beth's not here because she's down at the farm keeping everything alive right now because it's very hot, as we are all aware. So Beth and I work together to manage the farm. We collaborate with faculty, students, we have interns, we have student workers. And we're just down the trail, as I mentioned earlier, so come visit. We also, another piece of background is that the farm does not have an operating budget. So Beth and I get paid by the college, which is funded by tuition money and state revenue, so thank you. But for all of the supplies that we need to purchase to run the farm, so like seeds or potting soil for the greenhouse, all that stuff comes from revenue generated through the sale of farm products. And so that's why you'll see, well, last year you would see Pam, and this season you'll see Aurora with students from Practice of Organic Farming on Red Square, Tuesday and Thursday afternoons from 3 to 6, selling produce. And as a student, that's where you can get a 50% discount on all produce thanks to the Clean Energy Committee, which Pam was mentioning earlier. It's a really exciting program that hopefully makes it more accessible for students to buy the products that are grown just down the hill on college land. So that's a really exciting thing. Another thing that I mentioned briefly before that I want to highlight is the upcoming collaboration that we're still working out the details, but there's something called co-curricular funds, which it's all kind of new to me. It's a new thing through the way the college is organizing academics, but essentially there's some grant money available to support student learning that's not directly credit bearing, but is related to the curriculum. So if that makes sense. So it's what the folks in the Food and Ag Pathway put together is a grant proposal that will provide Rochelle and Ellen and folks some support in the campus food bank to keep it open during summer and have more steady folks there. There's a connection to, hopefully a connection to the Flaming Eggplant, and then there's a connection to the organic farm through gleaning, which is sort of harvesting unused or unmarketable produce and making it available through the food bank. And so we're not really sure what the details are going to look like. Some of us in this room just came from a meeting where we're like, I wonder what the deal is. So we'll figure out what the deal is soon, but that's something that's very excited. There's just a lot of positive stuff going on, so that's what kind of I wanted to make sure to give a little bit of the background, because it's a little, so I mentioned not everyone was here, but when I was introducing myself, I mentioned that this is the start of my 4th season, and I'm still learning a little bit about how things work. My experience as a newcomer to Evergreen is that it's a very organic process of trying to figure out who is in charge of what thing and who I need to ask or what rules I might need to follow. And so I think that it can be a little bit intimidating, but I'm excited to see so much change that's happened already just in the brief time I've been here. And I'm looking forward to, and not stuff that I've done, but it's just what's happening in the community. So I'm looking forward to continue to see that progress. And then immediately down on the farm, this is planting season. So we're going to plant 8 beds of flowers. We're going to plant tomatoes. We got lots happening on the farm tomorrow. So anyways, was that helpful? Do I need to, anything I missed?
What else are you planting?
Oh gosh, it's an incredibly long list, but it's all delicious.
Okay.
And we hope you enjoy it.
Kendra, can you speak to what's going on with food sovereignty with the POC and Indigenous students?
Let's see. I can only speak to sort of the classes that I taught last year. In the spring, I taught Indigenous Food Sovereignty class, which was open to not only Native Pathway students, but all Evergreen students. And then, actually that was in the winter, and then in spring, I taught a master's level course in food justice, which was open, they opened it up to underclassmen as well. And it was mostly the MPA students, but also the science students came too. It was, what's that? Yes, the MES students, thank you. And it was really cool experience. What I can speak to, a big part of those classes were telling stories and hearing our food stories. And a lot opened up during that time. And students shared experiences with the issue of food insecurity, for one thing, and the fact that a lot of people make assumptions that college level students or adult students don't have food insecurity issues. And so because that's sort of an assumption, it's just not even a thought, oftentimes the systems, our food systems, aren't able to support our needs if they're not even aware. And one of the things specifically for our Native Indigenous students in relation to when we think about place-based, we've had a lot of challenges in the past, and this is coming from me as a student even 10 and 12 years ago as well, and now as faculty, and seeing our Native students really struggle sometimes with the things that we need as far as being able to prepare and present our traditional foods for our ceremonies and for our classes and for events that we hold here in the Longhouse or on campus that are just part of our way of life. And having to try to find ways to get around being able to do that and just coming up against a lot of barriers. And especially when we think, again, like we're on Native land, you know, and yet we aren't even able to enjoy or take part in our ceremonies fully, enjoy our traditional foods in this place. So I know that that's something that's, you know, been a constant concern.
Katie, can you speak a little bit about what you talked about in your Alternatives to Capitalism class, food system-wise?
So I feel like the first thing I would want to throw on the table, just to kind of piggyback off the mention of the concern about declining enrollment levels at Evergreen is that it really seems like the abstraction student population, the students who aren't present here, are sometimes the priority when it comes to a lot of decisions that are made. And I think when it comes to, really genuinely desiring to get students like involved in understanding what this community is and the food system's role in it, it seems like that is a major obstacle. And so last quarter I was in the Alternatives in Into Capitalism program, and we started a project kind of learning about the food system on campus. And the first things we were told right out of the gate was, oh my God, it's like super contentious and like really complicated and like this big scary thing. And I feel like that's a kind of, what? Yeah, I know. I was like, what's about to happen? What am I preparing for? But I think that says something to me, that's something that's kind of led out of the gate, and being told to students who are just trying to like understand what the heck is going on. And that kind of seconds, Connor, what you mentioned about just the learning curve of figuring out like what the hell is going on. That's a thing, and it takes time, and it seems like there's some lack of understanding what connecting all of the pieces of the community really looks like, and then as well, I would say that in our like research, we learned a lot about, the legacy of like all these alternatives that were attempted on campus and the obstacles that came up when each one was attempted. And it seems like there's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy there, where that then kind of becomes a justification for why there isn't transformation, or there aren't alternatives on campus, where it's like the presence of this very large contract with a very large vendor that has a lot of kind of restrictions and stipulations that would affect any alternative presence of food. And so that would make it difficult for that to kind of thrive, and then that not succeeding becomes a justification for why like that is needed in the first place. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay, and lastly, we'll get to all your questions. I just want to end with Lauren. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on presently with the Vegan Club and the GSU?
So I guess first I could talk a little bit about what's been happening with Green Monday, because that was a really recent thing. So on Earth Day, we launched the Green Monday program at the Greenery. And for the lunch party, it was an all vegetarian menu during lunchtime, and it seemed like it was pretty successful, and we used that also as a tool to educate people about the ecological benefits of eating plant-based foods. And then I've also been the coordinator for the Vegan Club, and we do a lot of stuff on campus, and we're centered around food, because that's a big part of it. But we are actually having a film screening on next Friday, and we're showing the film Dominion, which shows undercover footage of the animal agriculture industry, which I think is incredibly important for everyone to see, so people can make the best decisions about what kinds of systems people are supporting. And then also for the Geoduck Student Union, I'm the sustainability liaison, and I've been working with trying to make it easier for students to choose more sustainable options, mainly focusing on like food and trying to work to encourage more people to use reusables at our campus locations like Einstein's and make things accessible.
Okay, thank you all for giving us a glimpse into what's presently going on with each stakeholder in the food system. I want to open it up at this point. Who has questions now that we have a pretty good background of the context that we're in? If you have questions, now is the time to just raise your hand. And okay, number 1 in the green shirt and number 2, Sadie. Go ahead, number 1.
Evening and weekend studies student, and just based on the situation that you guys are saying here, a question comes to my mind is, historically, has there been as much lack of support for evening and weekend study students for food options as there is now? As of this quarter, the greenery and the upstairs area, all of that stuff is closed by the time that I go to class, and the only option I have is Einstein's Bagels. And I can't live off bagels. I tried doing that for 2 quarters. It was fine at the beginning, but the end was not that good. So I'm just curious, are there any plans or options that I can look at or look forward to, or that my fellow students can look forward to, that'll give more options for those students in the evening and weekend classes, so that way we can have a better and healthier diet?
That's a great question. We have recently reduced some hours recently, but we know that that's very temporary. But we are starting to try to address that. We're looking at reusable to-go boxes and looking at how we expand that. Our grab-and-go program, we're looking at how do we expand that as well, and maybe even having something at the greenery. Yeah, we've been also thinking about what do we do differently in the market. So a lot of questions are up there, and we are trying to figure out how do we support students that come at night and on weekends too. So we're definitely trying to look at how we expand our services to you guys. So.
That was a great question. I think historically when the cab got remodeled back in 2010, and right when at the beginning when the eggplant was open, the market was open until 10 p.m. The thought was that to really activate campus, having the cab open really late, and the eggplant was trying to be open till about 8 or 10 as well. And over time, that has been shifted and changed. And so that was the hope originally, that there would be a lot. And I think, and I don't know, there's more evening and weekend classes than there was in the past. But there definitely seems to be more students in evening and weekend classes in the last couple of years. And so that's definitely a population we're looking at. Just out of curiosity, you said the only thing open when you started class was Einstein's. Does your class start at 8 or?
Our class starts at 6,
okay.
And we usually take a break around 7:30 to 8 o'clock, and Einstein's currently closes at 8:30.
Okay, great.
Yeah, when I started working at the eggplant, we were open, this was like 3 years ago, we were open until 5 o'clock. And I know that we were open later in previous years, and I think since we first opened, the financial pressure of like, how do we break even, has forced us to like reduce our hours to the point where this year they were like very narrow, in an effort to reduce our labor spending and narrow in on like the hours where we're really making any revenue. But in our revision of our business plan, that is something we're definitely talking about a lot, and like, how do we make ourselves accessible to evening and weekend students or people who live on campus and are here more than just the middle of the day, Monday through Friday. Yeah, I'm not sure how if we're going to achieve that in the first stages of our reopening, or if we're going to make baby steps towards like achieving all of our goals, towards creating like the ideal eggplant serving the whole community all the time. But that is definitely a very large part of the conversation in who we're serving and when we're serving them.
Hi, I'm Sadie Sparks, and I've been a student here for way too long, since 2013. And I co-run the Vegan Club with Lauren. I have a question, and I'd also like to just give a little bit of background information about what the Vegan Club is doing. We are very sad to see the eggplant currently closed. I'm your biggest customer. I'm really grateful for the eggplant and the organic farm stand. We've gathered a petition with over 300 signatures of community members asking the eggplant to go fully vegan and to end animal exploitation in all forms at their establishment. And so what I'm seeing is this group of people up here who's so passionate about food and who's really thinking about all the social dynamics that are going into food. And I'd also like to bring in the animals' perspective, because they are the primary victim of this really, really, really violent food system that we're a part of right now. And so we have this amazing organic farm that on one day is selling vegetables and another day is teaching people how to hurt and kill animals. And we have the eggplant, who's run by amazing student workers, who's then selling dead animal body parts that are destroying our planet and that are destroying families of animals. And I mean, it's not helping anyone. And so my question is, how are we going to move forward ethically? How are we going to move forward with ethics at the forefront, considering the animal who is the biggest victim in this problem?
Thank you. One thing to consider is that factory farms are an issue, whereas people for thousands of years on this planet have developed cultural rights and ways of working with the consciousness of the animals. So part of the problem solution situation is that when we're coming up with ways to make changes, that we need to also consider racism in those changes. So what that means is that really understanding that you have to do your research. You have to go make relationships with the knowledge of indigenous peoples across the planet. You have to go read. There's plenty of books about how indigenous peoples have been in relationship with all components of the earth, that vegetables are also conscious, that the entire world is animate, that no part of the earth is more important or less important than any other part of the world. And when you go and you learn and you ask those questions and you really listen, and you remove your racism, that's gonna lead towards a broader understanding. Yes, let's get rid of the factory farms and also the racism.
Thank you.
I can answer from the perspective of the eggplant and our values as a group of students and our plans going forward. Ethical sourcing is a large part of the Flaming Eggplant's mission. and that will not change with our changing priorities and mission. That will continue to be a part of that. I do not feel like it is the food providers on campus's responsibility to determine the diet of the people eating on campus. I think the goal of the egg plan and what should be the goal of the entire campus food system is to provide food for as wide of a range of diets as possible, which should include vegan options, should not exclude anyone from eating on campus, including indigenous people who have a historical relationship with animals and animal products that I don't think it is anyone's place to say that is unethical. So in the utopia self-op whole campus system, if all food providers are providing the same level of quality, affordable, like nutritious, ethically sourced food, then I would see it make sense to have maybe one of those food options be plant-based. But at this time, the eggplant fills a niche that the rest of the food on campus is not doing, and so I don't think it is fair to exclude people or to like determine people's dietary choices at the eggplant or on campus. I think those are choices that people make separately and like personally, and then come to campus looking to be provided for.
Thank you for sharing your perspective. And thank you, Mikkel, also for addressing the cultural lens in your response. And I just sort of wanted to second that, in that indigenous food systems are connected to the land. They're place-based food systems. And indigenous people are affected disproportionately by diet-related health issues. And dominant agri-food models further threaten indigenous peoples. For example, when we talk about farming or farming vegetables for food consumption, displaces our traditional plant relatives, and they are relatives, like you said. And so just things to consider. And that's why, I mean, this necessitates this inclusive approach. And like you said, really opening up for different cultural lenses and perspectives that maybe you haven't experienced before or heard. So thank you for the conversation and opportunity to do that.
I think what we're really talking about here is just relationships to food. Like, what's our relationship to food, but also what's our relationship to the planet that provides the food? How do we think about that? And I want to just elevate it a little bit and just think about, like, where do we want to go? Because this is going to end in, I don't know, about an hour, and we're all going to go home and we're going to think about this. But like, where do we want to go in the future with Evergreen's food system?
So I'm really interested in systems and ways of thinking, perspectives. Reality is that every one of us has a different perspective, which means not a different opinion, but a different place in looking at reality, right? You're looking at reality over there. I'm looking at it over here. With systems, the food system touches every other system, right? And when we're thinking about systems, right, think about where the food comes from. It comes from the land, or it comes from Mexico, or it comes from Florida, or it comes from the Middle East, or it comes from your backyard, right? And then it goes through a whole process. And if prison labor is involved, then it goes through the prison system, which is there's lots of history around that. If it goes through the transportation system, if it gets brought from far away, then it goes through the entire oil industry process. If it goes to a school, then it's connected to the entire educational system and how curriculum is decided, how the structure of the school and all the decisions of the school is decided. We eat food, and that means that it's connected to our psychology. It's connected to the system of our bodies, right? And so it's connected to our guts and all the stuff in there, and it's connected to yeah, so I really want to open it, basically I really want to open it up for people to be able to learn how to imagine a multiple perspective lens, right? That maybe me personally, I have needs and wants and desires and feelings, and I have my own belief system, and that came from a place. But if we're to be here and we're to do what needs to be done, if we're to actually survive as a humanity, if we're to care for our future relatives, then we really need to find ways to get those things done, right? Which means that we need to do that work.
Yeah, Prita? Thank you, everybody, for a really informative panel. So I was just wondering if, Sharon, you could talk more about the contract, like the exact date, again, that the Aramark contract is expiring, and in terms of the RFP, like what are the components of like a successful bid? Like, or what is that process like? Like how is it determined, and what are the factors that they're looking for in terms of what a successful bid looks like?
Yeah, so, and if the dining servers were a public institution, so the contract, of course, is a public document, I can email it to you if anyone wants to see a copy, and you can also ask the Public Records Office. The contract ends, we had it set up as for renewal terms, and it ends in 2022 in August. The RFP process, so we get to the committees, which would be however we want to determine that, but it would be the school gets to decide in the RFP what are the important elements. So what an RFP is, you're getting proposals about what you want in terms of what kind of food service you're looking for. So if you read the current contract, it sort of highlights, it would include things like the contract period, the scope of exclusivity, what we're serving, the hours of operation, what kind of food. Then there's often, we have a really robust and pretty impressive sustainability list, and so there's lots of terms you can have. So you can state what you're expecting a third party to provide. So in terms of, we have things about making sure that we're thinking about where our grease where our unused grease goes, things about utilities, things about making sure whatever, if we want to use any food metrics to measure. So we have lots of ability to really lay out what are the elements that we want to see in the contract, because that's what the RFP is. You're thinking about what you'd want in the contract and what elements. And then what happens is after you write your request, is when you send it out for bid, then there'd be a rating system on that. And so that could also be determined. You had mentioned, or Pam had mentioned, sort of the rating system, and there's a point system, and so you would be looking at, so if financial stability was an important factor, that might get a certain amount of points. Sustainability in our last RFP had a lot of points. Making sure that whoever we worked with had labor standards that were even working with a union or had certain labor standards, we would write that in, and then people would be get points on that. You can be really creative and think about if you want to make sure that it's a small organization or they work with women-owned or indigenous-owned entities. I've seen lots of RFPs that also include points for any of those factors. So it's a pretty transparent process. So everyone, because it's an open public bid, so you would get to, anyone could read and see what was in the RFP. We had faculty, staff, and students on that committee, and to help write that and to determine what is important in that, and then what gets points and values. So I think in the current system, I think another part of that question is it talks about what's the value, but it also talks about what are the values and where does economics play into that. So if you're, Pam also alluded to when the Bon Appetit and Fine Host were here in 2003, and the college lost money on a contract, and then there was a $500,000 sort of, I don't know what the word is, bill, I guess, that it's sort of what you were talking about with the eggplant. So that wasn't managed well, and so the college lost money and had to pay for that. So financial sometimes is a major factor, but it doesn't have to be the most important factor in the contract. Does that answer your?
Yeah, that was helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, and what I'm hoping to do is it'd be great to maybe work with a class to figure out how we could do that, because it's a whole process that I have to follow, and I'm a little fuzzy because I haven't done it since 2013, but it's all laid out and sort of what the steps are, and we work with the purchasing department to do that. But it does take about 1.5 years to just write what we want in the contract. It's a long and very exciting process to do that.
Hi, my name is Josette, and I am a student in the Native Pathways program. I am actually at the Tacoma campus, but I'm down here twice a quarter for weekend classes. And I am the vice chair on our student governance. And I don't necessarily have a question, but a request. I wanted to share a little bit about my experience here at Evergreen with the food systems. My job on student governance is to plan and execute our honoring and graduation celebration at the end of every year for our students. And Natives like to eat. We have to, we do like to feed our families when we're celebrating. And we have struggled for the last 2 graduation ceremonies that I've been here to find a way to offer our families our traditional foods and the foods that we like to eat to celebrate, while still following the guidelines that the contract that the college has with Aramark requires us to follow. It's extremely limiting. There are some really high dollar amounts for insurance if we want to bring in an outside caterer, which in a Native community can be prohibitive. We have lost the opportunity to use caterers that we've wanted to use because they don't have that high dollar insurance. So my request is, when you're looking at this RFP process, would be to keep the Indigenous students in mind, in that we do like to provide Indigenous options when we host events, and that currently that is very near impossible to do.
Thank you very much for that feedback. That the insurance policy and the outside caterer is actually not part of the food contract. It's part of the food policy, and that's about risk management. But I know that we've given a blanket exception to the Longhouse, and so that's something that we can look at and figure out when you're doing graduation. If there's a way to work more closely with that. But yes, I don't love the food policy currently on campus either, because there's definitely some restrictions. The Aramark contract allows me to give exceptions as the administrator for 10 times a year for different groups, so that we can definitely look at that part in the contract. But your other piece I will definitely look into as well. Thanks for bringing that up.
I wanted to jump in because I have to leave. I'm going to the bookstore to pick up our tulips, to put them in the fridge overnight, and the bookstore closes at 5:30. So if you find yourself in need of, say, a Mother's Day gift, keep your eyes peeled for beautiful tulips. But I wanted to just say how grateful I am to see so many people here. It's really cool that you folks who are incredibly busy, you folks as well up here, took time to sit inside on the most beautiful day we've had this year, because you care about this stuff and you're thinking about the systems and all of that. So thanks very much, and I'm going to sneak away, but thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, let's take a break. Let's take a 10-minute break. When we come back, sound like a commercial. When we come back, we'll be asking the question, what does a just and sustainable food system look like to you? And we'll have the opportunity to really just talk to one another about what that looks like for about 15, 20 minutes. So you're welcome to come back. You're also welcome to leave, but let's take a break for about 10 minutes. We'll come back at 5:25. Thank you.
Ding. Hi. Is it 5:26? Something like that? 5. Okay. I just wanted to acknowledge that it was 5:25 plus 1. And invite anyone who wants to talk about this. You're welcome to sit in the circle with us outside, or you're welcome to just stay where you are at, or you're welcome to just keep having these conversations together. However you want to do it, just let it be organic. Don't panic. It's organic. Right. Anyway, just think about, what does a just, sustainable food system on Evergreen campus look like to you? And if that involves Thurston County Food Hub, or what does that look like? And we will circle back at about 10:02, and we would love to hear some responses or some thoughts about what you talked about. Thanks.
I did. Sorry, kind of, yeah.
Okay. Michael, can you? Hello, hello.
Ding, 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 ding. This is the bell for breaking up the conversations. Ding, bring, 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 bring. Okay. Okay, what do you... Oh, what's going on?
All right. Thank you for these really rich discussions. Would anybody like to speak out to what was being spoken? No? Hi. Hi. Thanks for, hi.
Okay, how about everybody write down a paragraph and send it to our email? Is anybody gonna do that? Okay, what time is it?
Closing time. Okay. I think we did a lot. We had a panel. We introduced how the panel got started. Each panelist introduced where we are at presently with this food system, and then we talked about the contextual richness of each panelist. And then we sort of opened it up to questions in terms of, well, where do we want to go? Or what does it look like now for us, and where can we go? And then we broke out into some smaller groups where we discussed what does a just and sustainable food system look like for us in the future. So thank you for participating. I'm going to hand it over to Erin to close the event.
Yeah, thank you everybody who came and who shared all of their expertise and all of their questions and everything. I think this has been very, very exciting for us, not having had an event like this, but also we kind of do have smaller scale conversations like this. So the Food Systems Working Group does meet. We have these two larger meetings a quarter. We have one coming up next Wednesday, but we also do have meetings on a weekly basis as well. So if you are interested in hearing any more about that or in connecting with us, I think we can continue this work. You can talk to one of us about that. But thank you all so much for coming and for sharing with us today.
Josette, will you say a prayer for us? Josette's going to say a prayer for us.
I'm still practicing protocol. I do not know my language, so this will be in English. Creator, we just want to come before you tonight and say thank you for this opportunity for this group to come together and share their hopes and dreams for the food systems here at Evergreen. We ask that you open everyone's heart and minds as they leave and absorb this information and go forward in a good way so that we can build a better system here to meet the needs of our students. We ask that everyone go forth and stay safe and enjoy the rest of this wonderful evening. All our relations.